Hey, guess what? We're back, and Chris Jones isn't yet. So Chris Jones was at, I give him a lot of credit for this. Every year, Kansas City has a charity day at a local hospital, and even though he is still holding out, he showed up. And that says a lot about Chris Jones. I think it's great that he did it. And he spoke for the first time. Here's the issue. He's trying to make himself seem like a regular blue-collar guy, quote-unquote. I'm just asking for a raise. Yeah. By the way, I get that. And he's right. The butthole thing and all that. We all have opinions, and it's not based on anything, right? But he is asking for a raise, but it's not like a blue-collar guy making $50,000, hoping to make $55,000 so he can go out to dinner once a month with his family. Yeah. This is a guy that said, I can eat $10 million in fines, and I'll be just fine.
He did say
so
that.
Everything is somewhat relative here. But I will say this. I know Bosa's a defensive end, and he's a defensive tackle, and we value those positions differently. However, Nick Bosa getting $170 million, I would think is empowering to the stance that Chris Jones is making, because all he has to say now is, look, San Fran values their best defensive player. Do you value me?
Yeah, on top of that, you can ask for a raise and still go to work, right? That's what Jonathan Taylor was doing. Jonathan Taylor was in the building because he understood he needed to be a part of that team, even if the future wasn't bright for him. Chris Jones right now, with the way Kelsey ended up, the way this team needs to be better going into the season after winning the Super Bowl, he was a big impact, especially for that defensive side. So I'm okay with him sitting out. But somehow I would just make if you're going to hand out the, whatever blue plates of food, step into the building and kind of shake some hands.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Greg, we talked about a lot. Like, you can show up, not get fined, and come up with a Fugazi injury that everyone knows is wink, wink, Fugazi, but you don't get fined, you're in the building, you're with the guys, and you never have to step on the field.
Yeah, my only contest to that is right now what they're going through. Travis Kelce gets hurt. Now you're in the building and you're holding in. Now all the guys are walking around like, okay, Chris, like that was kind of our ability to say, we can get by without you because we got Patrick, we got Andy Reid, we got Kelce.
Right.
That was kind of their saving grace. We all believe that the Kansas City Chiefs would be okay if Chris Jones is out, but they still have those three guys. They don't have two of those guys. Chris Jones, so you don't know how you're going to look against the Detroit offense that you know can put up points. And then now you don't have your greatest asset on offense outside of Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's pressure on Brett Veach.
Well,
get this man back in the building.
And that's the side. We always look at it unfairly. Well, how come the players doing this? How come the players doing this? I want to flip that script just for a second, because what's Kansas City doing? Right? And I don't know exactly how much money he's asking for. We believe it's more than what Quinnen Williams got with the Jets, which is $24 million a year, and just under what Aaron Donald's getting with the Rams, which is $31.5 a year. So call it 29, call it 30, in that ballpark, right? I think we're all in agreement of that.
Yep.
So if we all pretty much have an understanding of where the money's going to be, what's Kansas City doing? How does it make good business sense or football sense to leave your best defensive player in his prime hanging out there like that?
It's interesting to me, and I think that Nick Bosa does play into the Chris Jones situation for this reason, right? Usually with this, it's like Price is Right. Who's the highest paid at the position? They get 25. All right, I want 25.5. But what Nick Bosa did is there's a gap in annual value and guaranteed value that's substantial. And I feel like if you're Chris Jones, you're like, I don't want to just get over what Quinnen Williams got. I want a couple mil more than Quinnen Williams got, and I think that might even complicate this negotiation more than help the negotiation.
And here's the problem. When you reference Price is Right, there's always that one jackass that goes, I wager $1. Right? And that's what the Chiefs are doing. $1. I'm assuming the three idiots next to me went over. I'm going to bet $1. It just doesn't make sense, and now it's real because there's a game tonight. Yeah. Now, you guys have reiterated, but I'm going to call you on and ask you one more time. If Chris Jones shows up tonight, is he Chris Jones?
I would think so. I don't think listen, I think what he brings value to when we talked about it is the fourth quarter, right? He's able to collapse the pocket, get after a pocket passer. You know what he can do with pressures. You see the list right here.
Can he just show up and beat Chris Jones?
I think so. I think it would be nonsense if he showed up out of shape and doesn't look like the football player we know him to be. I think it would be a trouble.
Hold on. They signed Nick Bosa on Wednesday to play on Sunday.
Right.
I don't see a scenario in which they sign Chris Jones on Thursday to play on Thursday.
I mean, if they sign him today, they expect him to play.
If Chris Jones is on the field, he impacts the game. because if you're now Detroit, you now have to double this guy. So now where you're going to a game where you're looking like we're pretty good up front, and we don't really have to double anyone. They don't have anyone that solidified themselves as a threat to where we got to pay attention to this guy and double him and send two. Chris Jones showing up frees up other guys. Now you have one-on-one matchups. It looks completely different for the Kansas City Chiefs and Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator. And so, yes, him just being there, I don't need him.
You have to take him seriously from the other side. I got you. All right. Yeah. Coming up in a little bit, we'll tell you how good the Chiefs have been with Patrick Mahomes in their Week 1 games and how bad the Detroit Lions have been in their Week 1 games. It ain't pretty, folks, but tonight's the night it all changes. By the way, speaking of changes, Joe Burrow's come off the questionable list for this game coming up Week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. He is going to play, because we were just talking about all the other quarterbacks of his year that deserve the money have gotten paid. He's the only guy that hasn't yet agreed to a contract, and I know you're not suggesting he sit out as part of a contract ploy, but it's a worthy conversation. You're coming off what seems to be a relatively serious calf injury. You have not gotten the big guaranteed contract like Herbert got, like Jalen Hurts got, like Josh Allen, who's before you got, and you're sitting there and you know they're going to give you the money, but you haven't gotten the money yet, and you're an injury risk. How do you handle that?
You play. I don't look at it as I get it.
It's business.
It's business.
Yeah.
It's business. But you also are looking at it if you're a competitor. Like, okay, the Cleveland Browns have Deshaun Watson. Well, if Deshaun Watson shows up and he's back to the Deshaun Watson of old, they have an elite quarterback. In week 2, if Lamar Jackson, if this all looks and fits the way that they're hoping that it does, they have an elite quarterback with a great offense and a new look. That's a threat. We don't have our elite quarterback. You can't take that risk. Yes, they started 0-2 last year. I've been all over that. But to start 0-2 and one of those games is not a division game, it's different when you have an AFC North that's going to look different because of the Pittsburgh Steelers and what the potential of Deshaun Watson brings. But his contract is tied. It's not just solely tied to himself. It's tied to T. Higgins. It's tied to Jamar Chase. So what he decides to do contractually will impact them moving forward in the future, whether they look differently.
I will give Joe Burrow credit for this. Of all the quarterbacks, prior to those guys getting signed, he was the only quarterback that came out and said, I'm very sensitive to the fact if I take all the money, and I could, that's going to make it very hard for us to keep the core group of talent I've had around me. So right now he's got no money, right? And that's where we sit right now. So more on Joe Burrow coming up. It is a big, big day, though, if you're a Cincinnati Bengal fan, that he is going to play. And I'll tell you why he's going to play. Because the Bengals are worried. The Bengals are scared. The Bengals are nervous.
What are they scared of, Craig?
They're scared of the Cleveland Browns. They're scared of the Baltimore Ravens. And believe it or not, they're scared of Kenny Pickett and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
George Pickens, baby.
And my recommendation to Bengals fans is stay on the porch with your dog. If you're scared, just stay right there. Everything will be okay. You're just not winning the division this year. It's just the way it goes. By the way, how do you know when an NFL player's made too much money in his lifetime? Any quick answers to that or no?
When he can sit out?
No, not when they can sit out. When they buy a reversible diamond-studded chain of his high school number and college number and pro number. That right there is Ezekiel Elliott with the reversible. I'm assuming those aren't fake diamonds, Craig. I'm hoping they're not fake diamonds. But he's got the 21. You reverse it to the 15. I do not make enough money. That's what I learned from that right there. And he has made too much money.
I was a big chain guy. I ain't gonna lie.
You were? You're a big chain guy?
I had a chain. I had a big golden necklace, and the medallion was. So when I got my first contract, I brought a cane corso. I never had a dog, so I brought a dog. So I
got two of them.
I had a molded face of my dog on my big chain.
Hold on. Wait. So you spent.
I didn't even have a car.
And you had a favorite dog's face on a chain? So you bought a dog, and then you said, how do I top that? Let me buy a chain of the dog.
With his name on the back. His name was Bishop. I loved him. That was my best friend.
First of all, I love Bishop too, but I love you a little bit less after that. I'm not going to lie. I just lost a little respect for you.
All I'm saying, I get it. I was all about the chains.
So I'm not a chain guy, but if I were a chain guy, this is the way to do it.
The number?
This is the way to do it. We're reversible because God, for whatever reason, we are tied to our numbers.
Yes.
I would like it's
Social Security.
It's a part of us
I
for
don't
life.
see 15 there. I see is. I just see the word is.
No,
when he
I
flips
see
over, it
15.
says is. That's all I see.
Is him. I see 15. I see 21.
Can you bring that
which
chain
you
in
can't do
tomorrow?
that
I'm gonna try to find a picture for it.
Is
I
Bill
love it. I got
Belichick
a lot
going
of
to give me some carries? Is Mac Jones going to be a good quarterback?
Hold on. I know we got to take a break. You're defending the purchase by saying I got a lot of compliments.
It was so big sometimes.
Those weren't real compliments.
Not it was.
It was so big they had to say something. They didn't want to say something mean.
The only
'Cause you're
problem
big.
is if I was eating soup, it would get in my soup. That's
We gotta see that.
Hey there, thank you so much for watching The Carton Show. You can subscribe right here to get all the latest bits and segments from the show. And by the way, while you're at it, we have a lot of great shows on FS1, so check them out too.